Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today we are thinking about clutter. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, clutter. We are thinking about this with Julie, our special guest, who's going to really help us break it down so we can think about it. So, Julie, thank you so much for coming on to my show. What does clutter make you think about?
Well, I have a little bit of a different definition than most people, and I
Okay.
want to share it.
Right.
So to me, clutter is anything that prevents you from creating a life you choose, deserve, and desire. It also prevents you from creating a life you love and a space that can bring you peace. So I want people to just be like, oh, it's not just the physical stuff, because that's what we tend to think about, right?
Yeah.
But a messy desk is a roadblock to a promotion, or writing the next great American novel, or an overstuffed closet is preventing you from bringing that romantic relationship that you really desire. So I really want people to expand how they view clutter.
Yes, thank you, Julie. That we are beyond the surface level of the word clutter, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the in-depth of what it means. Yes, clutter in that aspect is such a great way to think about it because let's be honest, we only think about the surface level about clutter and people are probably like closing off their minds because we're like, oh, clutter. I already know I need to put away those clothes on my dresser or on my or whatever you have. You know what I mean? We know this. It's okay. Everyone has a little clutter, but it's like when it gets into your mind and it gets into your emotions, gets into your personal life, that's when we literally have to take that moment to pause and be like, it starts with the hard questions. Am I right, Julie? Does it all
Ab-
start with those hard questions?
Absolutely. But remember, you got to give yourself grace through the process. We are remodeling. We had a flooded basement. Life has been crazy. And is everything as neat as I'd like it? No, but I know there's an end date and it is what it is, and I can do the best I can. But I like to share this statistic: 10 minutes a day adds up to just over 60 hours in a year. So you can accomplish a lot. That's a week and a half of work. So if you
Yeah.
give me 10 minutes a day, you're going to see a difference. The key is to keep with it.
Yeah, it's consistency. You know what I mean? That's one thing I'm learning, and that's been my word of the year. I usually give myself about like 5 words, and right now my two main words that I'm focusing on is discipline and consistency because that has always been my weakness is discipline and consistency. And now that I'm working on it, I'm realizing like it takes a lot of like consistency and discipline. You know what I mean? It's self-talk. Like the way that you talk to yourself is
Hmm.
such a big way of helping you clear the clutter. And it's like, what are you telling yourself? What are you believing? What are you claiming to be your truth? You know what I mean? I think that's the best way. And I loved how you said remodeling your house, but in my mind, the first thing I thought of was remodeling your inside. And I was like, that's the perfect analogy because that's what you're
It
doing.
is 1,000%. And I love that you
Absolutely.
picked those two words. And I like to say awareness plus action equals change. So you're aware of where your challenges are. And you know that. So you took action. You said, okay, these are going to be my words for the year. So that's going to help me get that laser focus. And when you do that, you change your life.
Absolutely. I spoke with a behavioral analysis, and she was, I can't speak at all today, so I apologize. Oh, analysis. And she is talking about how to help change behavior, you need to look at it in a small and bigger aspect. You know what I mean? Those two. And it has always stuck with me because she stated how to create a change, you need to start with the little steps to get to the bigger steps. And that's what it sounds like you were saying is that when you give yourself this grace, when you give this yourself this compassion that we also need, you start to see the accomplishments in your life because when you were talking about, oh, there's an end date in your remodeling of your home, people want that in their life. You know what I mean? They want that end date, knowing when will the trauma end, when will the healing end, when will this suffering end, when, but is there an end date for that when it comes to that aspect in your opinion?
No, I think we're constantly healing. And I hope till the day I die that I'm working on being the best version of myself. It's like I view it as an onion, right? You have all these layers, and you can do deep healing and immense healing. Then 5 years from now, boom, something sets you off. So then I always bring it back to myself. Okay, This tells me something else needs to be healed. What is it? And to not look at it as bad, right? Especially here, in the States, like blah, 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 and rugged individual and blah, 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 blah. No, we're always this work in
Yeah.
progress. Hopefully, we're always growing and moving forward.
Absolutely. Progress moving forward. I think that is something that we need to strive to. But does it take away from gratitude? Does that take away from be how do you, in your opinion, would you have gratitude and acceptance, but stay away from settling in compliance?
Well, you can't hold two opposing thoughts at once. So I think in general, the best place is to one, recognize you're a spiritual being in a human body, right? So you're
Yes.
not always going to be 100% in gratitude, and that's okay, right? But a consistent gratitude practice helps. You're showering in the morning, say three things you're grateful for, right? You're
Yeah.
stuck in traffic instead of like wanting to give someone the finger. What can I say? Five things I can say I'm grateful for right now, right? And you talked about the consistency and building those habits. And that's something that takes no time at all. And then you know
Mm.
what? And then it's that muscle and you build that muscle. And then, when you complain, you have a moment, it's okay. You give yourself grace. But then what you have to see, I'll never forget someone said to me, I'm not a fan of Facebook. And when I first got on it, they said, this was, gosh, 15 years ago. They said, you complain a lot on Facebook. And I said, what? And then I went back and looked at my post and I was like, ooh, they are absolutely right. And I said, well, I don't want to be like that. So now I have that
Yeah.
awareness. So I'm like, how do I change this? How do I change my thoughts? And what is it? The crazy number, like the number of thoughts that we have a single day. So just again, becoming more aware of that. And people who have clutter, the big thing is they get overwhelmed. So if you're
Yes.
like thinking negative all the time, you can be overwhelmed, and that's okay, right? Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't go down that rabbit hole. I'm wrong. I'm bad. I shoulda, woulda, coulda. None of that. But it's like, I'm a fan of you just put baby steps down, right? You do that
Mm.
three things you're grateful for a day. You write, today I'm going to write out a little plan of clutter and I spend 10 minutes on it. And, I don't do everything electronically. I have a big old plan. I like to cross off because I feel that sense of
Mhm.
accomplishment. I open an Etsy store.
It's that line. It's
Right,
that or
that
that check
line,
mark or the highlighter. Oh, I'm a highlighter girl. So just that highlighter. I absolutely agree. Continue. I'm
and
sorry.
with this Etsy store, I started in January and just opened it, and I had multiple of mini steps. And I'm like, okay, I can do these mini steps today. And then that builds, and then I get this, and I guess, and so blah 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 blah. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, you have a store and you did it, but you broke it down into manageable steps. And I think that's key for decluttering and most things in life, right? We're not going to change overnight. Now, I know Eckhart Tolle had that night of, the one dark night and bam, he's an enlightened human being. That's most of us aren't going to take that route. So it's like you
Absolutely.
said, discipline and consistency, and you break it down so you don't become overwhelmed.
Yes, that overwhelming factor is always something that we need to remember because I started recognizing when I'm overwhelmed or I'm getting flustered or
Mm-hmm.
frustrated, I literally start saying, okay, I take a moment to pause, breathe, close my eyes, and be like, what is the real problem here? And it's usually I'm not giving myself enough time. I'm not being nice to
Mm-hmm.
myself. I'm
Yes.
I'm running around with it like a chicken with its head cut off. There's no real structure. And when you're trying to create consistency and discipline with your awareness, there comes that accountability where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I have to be accountable for my actions. I want real intentions for what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And it's like then now you have to add honorability into it. You have to honor what you say you're going to do. You have to honor yourself.
Yes.
I heard on the radio the other day that somebody was talking about how there's been studies made where people are quick to be compassionate to others but not to
Mm-hmm.
themselves,
Yes.
and it's amazing to me because you can see these people are so kind to children, so kind to strangers or people with disabilities, or so kind to just people outside of their family or themselves. But when it comes to their family or them, it's like there's no room for error. And it's just like, why is that? Why did you allow that to be your structure, your discipline, and your reality? What are you so fearful of? because I feel like there has to be some fear factor in there. You know what I mean? For you to be so strict, to be so tight, where there's no room for error. I mean, in your opinion, what do you say to those type
Oh,
of
some
people?
type of trauma, but you've got to look at the household. Like maybe their parents demanded perfectionism, or their parents
It's true.
imprinted on them all the mistakes they made and that they don't want them to make. Or, society happens to us, right? We're these awesome
Yeah,
human beings when we're born, and then stuff happened. And so
yeah,
maybe it's these false messages that we're told, like, look at the standards of beauty for women, right?
ridiculous.
It's insane. And I'll never
Absolutely.
forget. So I lived in Los Angeles for 10 years, and I came from Vermont. I wore like overalls and stuff,
Two
and talk
different
about culture
sides.
shock. And I
Yeah,
and I was in good shape, but I would be next to these women at parties, and I'm like, I look fat, right? And I ended up becoming the skinniest I'd ever been. And I'm like, I finally had to say, this is not healthy.
yeah,
What is going on here? What is this about? And so I think that all of that are challenges, are usually trauma based. And, trauma doesn't have to be this huge event or ongoing abuse or whatever. It can be, someone embarrassing you in front of a crowd of people, and that just, puts you back in your shell. I worked with a woman, and she hired someone to declutter her, and they were so judgmental of her. She went back into her shell, and she took her 4 to 5 years to reach out to me because it was so traumatic, right?
oh, no.
So
Yeah,
it can be just one thing that happens. And then, we don't in school learn how to problem solve. We don't learn about conflict, right? So we don't learn these skills. So how we, then you go out in the world. Well, Oprah happened. I'm older than you are. So Oprah happened, and that was a big thing. And now we have a lot more resources like books and podcasts and everything, but it's not something that was in the consciousness for a lot of us. And so I think we need to bring that. You doing a podcast is a great example of that. You're bringing information to people where they can learn and grow, but understand, you're not alone. I don't know of anyone who has had a trauma-free life. And
yeah,
remember reading the Dalai Lama is afraid of flying or something. So this guy who's like about as enlightened as you get is still working on not being afraid of flying, right? So you're a work
yeah.
in progress. Embrace that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I love the example of the beauty standards because especially now with Botox and
Mm-hmm.
fillers and filters and so many things that are just people are just injecting, changing their body form. And it's just like, where's the gratitude of just the natural being of who you are? You know what I mean? Like that's what I don't know where it's missed. You know what I mean? But it's like something that you're taught when you're in a small town. You learn to just one work with what you got. And working what you got means not a lot of money,
Yeah.
not a lot of accessibility to go out and buy a lot of things at any given time or from expensive things. So it's just like working what you got is something that I've always held on to. So it's something that I always promote to my nieces as well and my nephews because it's like just work with what you got. If they like you for who you are, great. And if they don't, well then that's another person in the billions, trillions of people in this world that you don't have to worry about. You're gonna find a group of people that you like
Yes.
and that are gonna like you, and that's all you have to worry about. So the ones who act or just admittedly say that they don't like you, thank them.
Right.
Thank
That
them
was
because
quick
that's
and
one
easy.
less person. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, great. Off my list, off my to-do list. Let me check that off. Oh my goodness. And when you were talking about how you have an old school planner and how you check it
Yes.
off and how you write, I do the same thing. I have an old school, I write almost everything down repetitively because I have to be consistent in that way to make sure I don't forget. Because for me, repetitivity helps me remember, helps me stay consistent, helps me stay disciplined. And I think people need to learn themselves. You know what I mean? It seems like when you give yourself that time to learn how you operate, then it's
Hmm.
like, you get this sense of peace and joy. Am I right? I mean, when did you realize you had to take some time and learn more about Julie?
When I was younger, I used to go to psychics all the time, right? I wanted the
Okay.
answers from someone else. I didn't trust that I had all the answers within. And when I
Okay.
work with people, that's one of the first things I talk about. You know what's best for you. I see
Yeah.
my job as helping you pull that out, right? And so I was looking on the outside. And so a big thing for me was when I went and lived in Los Angeles, I went to clairvoyant school and learn energy healing. And so that I
Okay.
talked a moment ago about the onion and the layers. And so
Yeah.
the things we were taught and the energy, everything's energy. And before it manifests like disease, it's out here in your energy field before it becomes a physical item. So for me, that was probably the biggest stepping stone to really being like, okay. And then it was great because it was a 13-month course, I figured out I had some trauma. And I was like, this explains my life. This explains why I act like I do. Okay, so now I have this trauma. So now we work on healing it.
Yeah. Exactly. You got to have the understand. You got to know the context to even have the understanding. And the context comes with trauma. When you admit the fact that you have trauma and you still need healing and you're not perfect, that's the best way to start realizing, okay, I can fix this. I can do this. You know what I mean? I can adjust myself. It's just knowing that you're adjustable, knowing that people want to claim, oh, you're a diamond just under a lot of pressure, but it's just like, okay, what happens to a diamond to really be a diamond? You know what I mean? It has to
Yeah.
get cut. You know what I mean? It has to get cut in certain places to be perfected after it been pressurized. So it's like, okay, the pressure's the trauma. The pressure's all that bad life and obstacles and struggles that you deal with in any given way. But then that cutting off, that's healing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You cut yourself off and create this 2 carat or whatever carat you want to be of a diamond. That is what makes you beautiful, is owning all that you are. Why do you think
Yeah.
it's so hard to people to own everything that they are, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between?
Because we're told that's not okay. Again, it's this false, like the beauty perception. Well, who
Yeah.
decided that heroin thin was the beauty standard? Because back in earlier centuries, voluptuous women were the beauty standard, right? But then if we are fixated on our weight, then how can we change the world? How can we say, wow, that's corruption? I need to do something about that, right? It keeps us busy and focused on not making massive change. And I believe you're either coming from love or fear. But I would also, to me, define fear a little bit more and saying that's not believing that you're good enough or you're the
Yeah.
worthy enough or that you're loved, right?
Yeah.
It's we're either coming
Absolutely.
from one of those places and we get bombarded with messages every single day telling us we're not good enough, we're not worthy, we're not loved every single day. So that's about being like, okay, that's the clutter, that's the noise. I don't have to listen to that. Let me check in with
Absolutely.
myself.
Absolutely. I love that. I love because it makes me think about the extremities. We're constantly in the extremes of joy or happiness or the extremes of sorrow and sadness, extremes of anger and just rage and extremes of love and passion, but we never find that balance and we're so fixated in having the balance, but yet we don't do anything to get out of the extremes that we put ourselves into to actually step into that balance. And it's like once you find that balance, you start to declutter everything that we start cluttering our minds with because we start focusing on one topic. Yeah, it's cluttered by all the other nonsense that's around it. You know what I mean? Like for instance, you could be at work and work is fine. You have a healthy and likable association at work, but you deal with this one customer that totally threw you off your game and now he made you so mad and now you're upset and now you're in the extreme portion. It's like, okay. It's like that awareness you were talking about, having that awareness. Oh, that's a good point. I'm really enjoying this conversation and I'm really curious to know what is one of your pet peeves in life?
Well, I want to just have a little comment to that before I answer that.
Yeah, go
Just to
ahead.
remember what other people do and say is about them, how you
Mm-hmm.
respond is about you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that's customers having a bad day, that's her stuff. You don't have to let that wreck your day. So
Absolutely.
I'll throw that out. One of my biggest pet peeves in life is when people, you mentioned a small town. I grew up in my town, left, my mom got sick, and I came back. And one of the things that drives me absolutely crazy is recently I've had, and these people have all been in their 70s. And that's why I talked about as I hope to be growing and learning as long as I'm alive, and that the enabling of bad behavior and not being taking stock of who you are and how can I be a better person. And then the people who say, oh, that's okay, they yelled at you. Well, they're sensitive, so they had to yell at you. I'm like, what? I'm
Yeah,
sensitive. I would never use that as an excuse to lie or behave badly. So I think a big pet peeve is people who do not spend any time being self-aware. And it's always someone else, it's never them, and not taking that time to examine how can I be a better person?
absolutely. I actually spoke about that with somebody else, and she kind of said that was her pet peeve too, because it's like you you don't want to take accountability. You know what I mean? Like I understand for I'm not gonna say any names, but I know somebody who's like that too, that their parents' excuse is just, oh, that's just how he is. He's just a little slow. He's just always been a little slow. And I'm like, okay, just because he's slow doesn't mean he can't take accountability for his action. Just because he's slow doesn't mean I have to submit or I have to bend
Yes.
over backwards to please him or make sure that he's happy and not disturbed and his
Hmm.
pieces that he gets everything that he wants and he doesn't have a frown on his face. Like that doesn't work like that. He has to admit the fact that what his actions has consequences and this is the result of those consequences. And people don't like to acknowledge that. And that's a really big pet peeve of mine too, because it's like only if you had accountability would I have at least more respect for you. Own it. If you're
Yeah.
racist, say it, own it, be a racist. Okay, fine, then I won't be mad. That's just who you are. Just own being a
Right.
racist. If you love shopping and you have a shopaholic syndrome or whatever, and then you're addicted to shopping, okay, just say I love shopping. Shopping's what I do. Don't cover it up. Don't
Yeah.
hide packages. Don't act like you know how to budget your money. In reality, you're spending everything to your negative and under in the negative. You know what I mean? No,
Yeah.
it's like you're sabotaging yourself at the end of the day. And that's how I see it, unfortunately. That's crazy. But if you could have a superpower, what would be your superpower?
Ooh, a superpower.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna say no, not that I could. What's that? It was the flu powder in Harry Potter, so that I could just snap my fingers and I'd be in Italy, or snap my fingers and I'd be in Greece, so that I don't have to be on the airplane or anything. I love to travel, so bam, I'm there.
Right. Bam in there.
That
Yeah,
might not be a
yeah.
superpower, but that's what I would.
I that's a superpower. I'm sorry if you blink 3 times and you're in Italy. That's a superpower. If I can
Yeah.
hold your hand and we go to Italy with 3 blinks, honey, that's a superpower. Okay, I'm gonna take that as a superpower because that's pretty cool. Because I'm a type of person that's not impulsive because I'm learning how to not be impulsive anymore. But in my impulsive days, that would be a dangerous tool for me. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
I was taught if you wanted to handle your problems, you avoid your problems. So by avoiding your problems,
Ah,
you remove yourself from the situation, even if that means by removing yourself from to a different state or wherever the case may be. So for me, that would be a dangerous power because I would never confront my issues. I would never have to be accountable because it's like, okay, my problem is here in Las Vegas. I'm no longer here. Boom, I'm in Italy or I'm in Japan or wherever. So it's just like you're never confronting. But if you have that awareness and you have that
yeah.
accountability and you just want to use it for travel, that's a fun thing.
Yes. Yeah, that's all. No, I deal with my stuff, but I love to travel. And I'm a fan of travel because I believe that humanity would be so much better if we experienced different cultures, if we tried different
Yes.
foods, if we had these conversations with people who don't look or think like us and understand, you know what? Most of us want to be loved. We want to have
Mhm.
family and friends and connection. We want to be able to create. We want to be able to share our gifts. We have more in common than we don't.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really enjoyed my time speaking with you, Julie. We really discussed clutter in a way that I truly hope that one person can start thinking about this in a different manner. So we're gonna start wrapping up the show. What can be some lasting words of wisdom that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
Say that one more time.
Some lasting words of wisdom to keep us thinking.
I want people to remember that they are good enough, worthy, and loved no matter what, that the 10 minutes a day equals over 60 a year, 60 hours a year. And it's about progress, not perfection. And you are an amazing human being. And when you clear your clutter, you can share your gifts with the world. And we world desperately needs your gifts.
Absolutely. The worlds do. How shame on you for not sharing your gift with the world, right? Step into it and embrace it. That's a great way to keep us on thinking. So, with that being said, if you would like to know more about Julie and what she has to offer, go check her out. I have her photo on my website. So, just click right there under and access to her website so that you can continue on thinking. So, with that being said, bye.